to start off the meeting as we always do with our round robin updates. And so I can just call on folks from the Zoom screen and in person. And you can give us a quick update on projects that you're working on, anything that you'd like collaboration on, or upcoming events that you want to share. So let's see. Should we start with, how about Cindy?
Hello, Cindy Buxton from the Watershed Center up here in Trinity County. Just curious about what you guys have to discuss today. We do watershed and forestry products.
And then we'll go back into the room. So over here we have Steve. Do you want to give an update on what you're working on, how your march is going? Any forestry projects?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm still waiting for my forest management plan that we started about a year ago. We were going to have a project. We had some bidders coming up, and then that got canceled due to all the funding getting pulled. And so I just started. I'm basically right now clearing by myself. I hire a guy every now and then, and I've been waiting 5 years to make headway on this, and so I find that I make the most progress just doing it myself. And right now, the broom, which I thought was completely decimated in the fire, has come back to even stronger population than it was before, and it's starting to bloom, which is not a good thing. It's pretty, but not a good thing. So I'm waiting patiently.
Yeah. Thank you for your update. Let's see.
Yeah. They wanted me to take one. Thank you.
How about the ERS team that's just joining? Do you want to give an update on how things are going for you?
Advertisement.
So not everything all the way.
They don't have it ready yet.
Audio's on.
Okay, what about?
There we go. Yeah. Oh, here we can do this down too. This comes down too. So clean this. Cut our heads off.
Hey Kelly, can you hear us?
There we go.
The volume.
That's I'm gonna.
Volume.
What about Judy? Do you want to give an update, Judy?
It's changed.
Oh.
Where was the name?
Did Judy hear you?
I think she's on mute.
Oh.
Yeah.
Last time it was changed name.
No one can hear us. Can anyone hear us?
Can anyone hear us in the on the Zoom links?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Can hear you.
Okay, great. Kelly, do you want to give your update? We're just doing our round robin.
Hello. It's Harlan and Kelly, and I'm trying to change the name as usual from Mitch. We've been working heavily on Western Sonoma County project, along with Adriana and Jason. So that was just given to them, and that's a shaded fuel break. And we've been extremely busy with some appraisals that have been coming through. So basically, we've just been busy bees over here at Environmental Resource Solutions, and we hired a new employee. His name's Alex Flores as a technician. So we'll be mentoring a new technician here, and we are welcome to have him aboard.
We're in the middle of implementing Dernwood shaded fuel break, and we're about to move to Rio Nito and start that one.
Great. Looking forward to hearing how that goes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for the update. We'll go back to the room. Let's see, is your name Mark?
It is. My name is Mark Salovich, just a newer resident of Sonoma County. While I did a short tenure with the Nature Conservancy about 2 decades ago, I'm just interested in conservation and kind of getting connected here in the county as well, and some volunteer efforts.
Cool.
Thank you.
How do you came to join us today? All right, let's see, back on to Zoom. Jill, are you available to give an update?
Good morning. Jill Butler, representing Wallala River Watershed Council. And we usually have our board meetings the same week as the forest group. And this month we had lots of new folks from water quality join us. So they are definitely in the process of gearing up for working on their total maximum daily load program in the Wallala River watershed. And what I what I got out of sort of vague things they said was that they're going to be targeting road work, particularly with larger landowners that have over 1,000 acres, and also some of the more problematic roads. I would guess that would probably include the Kelly Road. And then at some point they're going to start working with people that have vineyards. And I think that's the main thing that's new up with us.
And your update. Let's see, back into the room. Christopher, do you want to give an update on what you're up to these days?
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Seche. I reside in Occidental. I have a 50-acre conservation easement with Bodega Land Trust. Tomorrow, we have a public burn pile workshop with UC Cooperative Extension and circuit riders to burn about 50 debris piles from our work last year. That's all under a Natural Resource Conservation Services grant. We're on year 4 of that grant. That's one piece of work. Also involved with Bodega Land Trust and the Tannery Creek Reserve out in Occidental. We just had a community neighborhood stakeholder meeting on last Sunday to bring all the neighbors together, trying to initiate community supported conservation work since we don't have anybody to manage these places. And then number 3, working with the Bohemia Collaborative out in West County on the steering committee and planning for our first quarterly members meeting. That's probably enough. Happy to join.
Sound busy. Okay, let's see, back out to Zoom. What about Judy? Can you hear me now? If you're ready to give an update? And you're on mute.
Okay, I can hear you now. We're in the car on our way to Santa Cruz. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not driving, my husband is. And just a couple of things. We're finishing out our spring workshop series. We had one with Jason Mills, came out and got a lot of people out there to pull broom, and he gave an excellent presentation on broom and other native plants. Sunday we had Ryan Berger from the Jenner Headlands, Marshall, and Ryan Clouch from State Parks talking about prescribed fire. We're looking at bringing more fire to the landscape. The weather was pretty wild. We had really good attendance. And so we have one last workshop to finish our series in April, and that'll be a landowner assistance one with the RCD and Jason, Fire Safe Sonoma, and RCS with Sloan. So that's coming up in April. We're also, our projects have been on hold because of the rain delays. We started Brain Ridge, which was a big project for us. We're not even halfway through yet, and we still have to wait after after it stops raining for the soil, so it's not so saturated anymore. And we're getting ready to start on our Cal VTP projects for our Cal Fire grant. So we'll be doing more road work on the Seaview Ranch and Navarro Ranch and along Blue Jay. For those of you who don't live out in that part of the West County, Blue Jay Road is off Fort Ross Road. And for the new people here or there, my name is Judy Rosales, and I'm the executive director with the Coast Ridge Community Forest. That's about it. Thank you.
The update. Thank you, Judy. And I hope you have fun in Santa Cruz. Let's see, maybe we'll keep it on Zoom for a second. Just pop down to Eric. Next on my screen, Eric Shoes.
Hi all, Eric Schus. I work with Sonoma Ecology Center and also just started my own business doing land stewardship services under Ecos Land Services, focused on ecology. Wow, super busy time, really enjoying it though. This upcoming weekend, we're starting a program with the SRJC and La Luz here in Sonoma Valley, doing ecologically informed like an ecologically informed fire resilience program. So fire resilient landscapings is the SRJC course traditionally, but we're kind of expanding it to beyond defensible space as well. And of course, fire is always important, but we're thinking about all the ecological health that can go into it. So that's going to be offered in Spanish, but we're also creating the programming so that it can just be generally a course that's been updated. Historically, like Joel Grogan and Thea Carlson have both led it. So we're really excited to kind of build off of the curriculum that they've made originally. Beyond that, a lot of workshops. The burn pile workshops going on have been fantastic. Some out at Pepperwood, I've been out in West County. We did one here in Sonoma Valley. And on the 8th, so a couple weeks back now, we had a really nice workshop with Cal Poly, Cal Poly Swan Ranch, I should say. Getting out and checking out Pepperwood and a few other places over here, kind of on the east side of Sonoma. So really enjoying all of that. Looking forward to continuing the work, and we're all here navigating kind of the federal funding shift. So always like to hear what other people are up to, and it's nice to hear that Judy, y'all out west have been keeping after it. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, let's go back to the room if we want to. You can skip. What's your name? I have to get you.
Oh, my name is Art. I kind of thought I was gonna just be in the background
Okay.
here and just, but, with the work here is of interest to other committees and boards that I'm on. And when I saw the topic of gully repair and with Brock speaking about beavers, I always want to hear more about that. So I just decided to crash the party here.
Great, glad you're here. Okay. And let's see, I don't know if I've met you or.
No, my name is Claudia. This is my first time here. I share Lynn's property with her. And I'm also interested in the gully stuffing, although in our case, it's about huge landslides and lots of silt. And as the trees die and the dirt erodes, we have much more silt that's going to Marquest Creek. And I'm quite interested in that. I've been with the Friends of the Marquest Watershed for 10 years or so, and the fish are having the fish come back. I haven't seen a red for 10 years, and I'd like to see the fish come back. And I don't think the silt that's been coming down the last couple of years, and I can see it only getting worse because we have very deep ravines. So I'm interested in gully stuffing that may then not so much be about gullies as about ravines and deep, ancient, old water that comes down to the creek that's now getting really jammed up with silt. So that's why I'm here.
Good, glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. All right, let's see who's on Zoom. What about Corby?
Hey everybody, I'm Corby Hines. I'm a ranger at the Jenner Headlands Preserve, and we've had a bunch of shaded fuel break work recently done, as well as some fuel load thinning. And so we've got a lot of gullies, a lot of material, so just here to learn.
Thanks for joining us. And then next on my Zoom screen is Hoa. Let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, this is Hua. I I'm in the ecological space. I don't live in Sonoma, but just want to learn about community organizing and of course here Brock Speak.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, and then I'm gonna keep it moving. We have K-Star Weather on Zoom, if you want to give us an update.
Hi, I'm just here. I'm a private landowner with a big family, and I'm here with my sister-in-law, Karen, who I think is still on here. And we're here to learn about gully stuffing from Brock. So that's what drew us here.
Great, thanks for joining us. And then let's see. I don't think we've heard from Rory.
I also don't live in Sonoma County, but am just interested to learn about gully repair.
Great, thanks for joining us. And then I'm gonna move over to Craig Carpenter. All right, maybe Craig's not available right now. Let's see about Michael. Maybe also not available. Okay. All right, we'll go back to the room. So what about Lynn?
So I'm Lynn Garrett, I'm with the Upper Marquis Watershed. As Eric mentioned, we had a really good workshop with Cal Poly and Ag and Open Space that visited our area. So Saddle Mountain Preserve, as well as Murray's Rill, as well as Pepperwood. The projects that are going on, the Salina Road Shaded Fuel Break is still going on with Conservation Corps North Bay working on that, doing thinning and limbing and invasive species removal. And individually, people are doing lots and lots of burn piles. We're all trying to get our burn piles done before the end of the season. Our next major project will be to do a community-led effort to come up with a new list of priority projects. We've completed a lot of the projects that we had in our last CWPP and Firewise priority list. And so we're gonna reshuffle that list to see what comes to the top this time and what new things might be added. So we've launched a survey. We'll do some email exchanges with our community, and then RCD is assisting us on a community meeting on May 3rd.
Wednesday and Thursday, the 26th and 27th.
Okay, and then some good news heartening news for folks that are concerned about their federal assistance and grants. So on an individual basis, I have an EQIP grant and I finished 3 projects, and the NRCS EQIP representative came out, certified that the work was done. I signed the DocuSign documents the next day, and within 5 days, my money was deposited in the bank. So hoorah for NRCS, and not everything's on pause.
That's great news. Great, thanks for that update. What about Patty?
Hi, I'm Patty Aaron, I'm with the Sonoma Resource Conservation District. We have finished up all of our spring workshops and are now looking at, like Lynn said, working with Upper Mark West. We're working with the Grove Street Fire Safe Council and just trying to see what else needs to be done and where we can help.
Okay. What about Fred? Do you have an update for us?
I've got a little roads and sediment presentation to go in here today, and it's an exciting time, let's just put it that way. A lot of projects going on. We went up to Sacramento to talk about the fitting we've been doing at Jenner for UCANR on Monday.
Cool, great. And then back on Zoom, I guess we're gonna hear from Brock later, but do you want to give us an update about just general goings on?
I think through the slideshow, your guys will, I'll weave in my updates and yeah, so yeah.
And then is there anyone else who joined on Zoom who wants to give an update? I think Kusuma joined recently.
Hi, yes. I'm not sure what I should speak on.
Oh, we're just going in a round robin and talking about if you have any projects that you're working on that you want to share about or upcoming events, etc.
Yeah, we actually, we're just private landowners. We bought a 5.5 acre property down in the Hessel area of Sebastopol. And we have a very substantial amount of a creek or stream running through with really deep erosion and deep bed that I think is continuing to sink down in. And so I'm here to learn about gully repair and restoration work for that.
Thanks for joining us. Well, we'll keep moving and we'll get to Fred's presentation next. I did want to share, this is a bit of sad news that I think most folks have heard by now, but we lost one of our members, Stephen Swain, and he passed away on February 8th. Very sad news, and I just wanted to take time, if anyone does want to reflect or share here in the meeting, we have time, but there's also an online memory wall. And so I'm going to share the link in the chat so everyone can see that. Folks are posting photos, memories, and thoughts there. So I just wanted to share those links in the chat in case you did want to maybe reflect later or see what other folks are sharing there. So I'll pop those in the chat. Very sad.
It's very sad. So would you like me to try and go next?
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna hear from
I'd like-
Fred.
What I'd like to do is some screen sharing.
Yes, and you can do that.
Okay,
And I think
and I'm a good setup for Brock today. And I'm honored to be working with you. Yes. Yes.
got it.
Victory via Zoom. Hey, I'm Fred Euphrat, and I've been in RPF for a long time. And I have a doctorate in forest hydrology, and a lot of the stuff I'm gonna be talking about today is stuff I have been working on since the 90s and earlier. And I think it's a good setup for Brock because it's where do gullies come from? And how do we dig uphill to find them? Most gullies come from roads. And there's really three places I see roads, which is ridge top, mid slope, and valley bottom. Here's a diagram. Excuse me, this is a photo actually of my land done by the Press Democrat after the Walbridge fire, and you can see the ridgetop roads and how we get there, and then there's these roads down way at the bottom of the streams. Those are not really capable of catching sediment before it gets into the stream. And then there's the mid-slope roads, which have the problem of they keep crossing drainages and they keep pirating those flows. Super basic here, but this is a class for all. There are four shapes of roads. There are outsloped roads, which are preferred because they tend to get rid of water. There are inslope roads, which have a ditch on the inside, and they're relieved by relief culverts, cross drains at every given point. There are crowned roads with culverts on the inside and off sloping to the outside. I had some work done on my property by AT&T that was putting in a tower, and the guys from, I don't know, from the Central Valley could not get past crowned roads. Every time they built a road, it was crowned, and it so screwed up my drainage for a forest property. And then there's through cut, and that's a little image at the bottom, which looks strangely like the I don't know emoji, because it's a through cut. I don't know how to drain a through cut. You have to punch through one wall or another. It's where the road is concentrating the water and you just can't get it off. Is there a photo of a perfectly outsloped road, and the people who did it were extremely proud of themselves, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work because
the berm that starts getting created on the side of the road, the gully, the wheel ruts inside the road, all serve to run the water down the road. So here's an old CAL FIRE diagram of wrong right with rolling dips at the bottom. You need relief culverts, relief channels along that outsloped road. Outsloped alone is not good enough. This is from the Mendocino Roads Handbook, and it talks about when you would want rolling dips for water bars for seasonal roads. We build them up big so that they're not particularly drivable. Decommissioned roads, they're bigger and scarier. And then rolling dips on a maintained road are gentle enough to drive across. They have been referred. There are generic terms for just how comfortable they are. Don't drain your roads onto ridges. Don't look at the softest part of the hardest part of the landscape furthest from the stream to put your road on, because you're going to end up with a gully on that ridge. So the nose of a ridge is a terrible place to dump your water. Always be looking where you are dumping your water. And that moves us to the next, and when you have it right, it looks really cool. And this is my dog demonstrating rolling dips in the Guala River. And you can see how this was put in by guard Helen Paul, but we just agreed, boom, 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 boom. We're needing the rolling dips. This is a steep road, it's mid-slope road, and the dog approves. A rule of thumb for how to create a drainage when you're looking downhill, you take your thumb and you extend it away from your hand, and you point downhill and you put your pinky on the uphill slope, and your thumb is now pointing at the correct water bar angle, about 30 degrees. And wacky as this seems, see, it works. It works. Just point at the next road you see, and there's your water bar. There are many rules of thumb in forestry. I'm lucky I still have my fingers. So that's for an outslope road. Here's an inslope road. I'm gonna pound on this for a second, but there's a reason I'm doing it. You see everything, the water is the blue line that's going in, it's going into the inboard ditch. We're maintaining the inboard ditch, everything is working as it should, and then the water is coming out here. Is it a channel? Is it not a channel? What's gonna happen to the water? Well, this is upstream, in a well-maintained road, that ditch is dug. And in fact, you can see that it's over steepened every year. We have the county come in and redig our ditches and reinitiate landsliding into that side of the road, all the way across it. The ditch is open and the culvert is open, but the situation is still not particularly stable for driving cars. And these are roads we're talking about. He's okay. But it just proves that the ditch was cleared very effectively.
The county will clear out ditches on county roads?
Absolutely.
Really?
Constantly.
Really?
Constantly. And then they build up the asphalt on the road to make the ditch deeper. And then the material falls into the ditch to block the ditch. And somewhere in there they sprayed
what is that stuff?
Yeah, what is that? Hypermulch, the green stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sprayed the green stuff in there and then they regrade it just to make sure there's more fertilizer in the water course. This guy's in Idaho and I like his license plate, 437. Hey, I'm stuck in a ditch. Another thing that happens with roads all the time is they cross creeks. They cross streams, they cross water courses, anything you like. The right way to do it is like this, where you are planning for the blowout of that culvert, and it is the low point on the road. If it is not the low point on the road is capable of capturing that flow and sending it down the road. And that's just with a blocked culvert. That's why we put, trash racks above culverts, as simple as a post. Just to keep crap out of the culvert so it doesn't block and then create an error like that. This is all upstream. Oh, so in general, when we're doing a water bar or a culvert, we like to divert, and you'll hear that as slow. We like to discharge effectively. We like to dissipate, spread, and sink. We'll be hearing more about that. And we like it to be the correct distance in terms of drainage. So there's not rilling in between the different water bar or water turnout points. And when I say water bar, I'm including rolling dips and the variety of things relative to drive over. This is all a very upstream looking down perspective. This is all, I have a road, I'm doing something with it, I'm trying to drain it. The thing it misses is downstream looking up. And here our demonstration dog is looking at a pile of sediment adjacent to a creek that was higher when the sediment was deposited, and all of the other sediment's been washed away, but we can walk straight up to where this sediment started. Like here, for instance, this is my road guys from Sacramento. They inslope the road and then they put all this side cast coming down it. And so upstream looking down, we're looking at all this side cast, what the hell is gonna happen to it? And downstream looking up, we say, oh, well, here comes the side cast, and meanwhile, we're aggrading the channel and we're increasing cutting inside the channel. So now we have more things to worry about because we got more sediment in the creek and therefore a new base level in the creek. Complicated. So I came up with a little thing called a sediment transport corridor, and I've flown it a few times. Let's see if it sticks this time. You end up with a source of sediment, which could be the watershed itself and natural erosion rates, bioturbidation from gophers and dogs, or you can have gullying specifically caused by a given reason, which we'll talk about later. You can have sheet wash, like we were looking at that road, where you're just going to have sheet wash down into the creek. And you can have channel cutting. Channel cutting is in itself a source. It's not always just redistribution. In transport, there's the channel cutting and redistribution, the deposition, and you try and create a balance. One hopes for a balance of transport in the watershed model. Then when you get to the end, you find deposition. And that deposition is flats and turnouts and roughness, the roughness of that channel. So maybe it's logs, maybe it's sticks, maybe it's boulders, maybe it's some other kind of roughness, or it gets to the fluvial system. Can we all see that? Well, good. Good. That's the only way I can get a blackboard in here. You can document sediment transport corridors and have done so. This from '96 study on Louisiana. Oh, remember Louisiana Pacific? Anyway, this is Greenwood Creek, and here's a road, and it kept collapsed out. The red area is the sediment transport corridor. The creek has a bunch of fallen alders in it, but that stuff is going directly into the creek. And that in the box, any new sediment generated will reach creek. It is a fully marginalized sediment transport corridor. So if I stand in the rain with a teaspoon of sediment and dump it on it, that teaspoon is going to make it all the way to the creek because every deposition point has been captured and filled. It's, it's marginalization. We have this much buffer and we've used it all up. Where do they come from? In that same study, we found collapsing bank, directly road related, coming straight off a road. Now this is from the 90s, so it may probably gotten better. From seeps or springs, once it's not unusual at all to find gully starting at a C4 spring upslope, and you don't even know about it. And there it is. How do we find these? We're walking up the stream, and every time sediment is coming in, we're walking up the sediment. Culvert, erosion, unknown tributaries. In theory, this is supposed to there's erosion, then sedimentation. Other places have clear runoff. And then the erosion goes into the stream as sedimentation, and it's presumably minimized. Minimized by a long transport corridor, minimized by a lot of redistribution, minimized by going into bars and channels and sand deposition. But it's so much easier in theory than it is, and this is actually showing how long sediment takes to get somewhere. So much easier in theory than in practice. This is an air photo of Jenner in 1960, the Jenner headlands, where we are now growing old growth. Historic disturbance remains. Every one of these roads has been, quote, either put to bed or ignored since this. And we, looking at it, have to develop an erosion. These days for a timber harvest plan, you've got to develop an erosion control plan as well. So we would be looking at this. And now, these are things that you can't read, but upstream looking down, you can evaluate the roads. Downstream looking up, you can evaluate the streams. You can look for stream sediment transport corridors. And you want to do your plots proportional to probability. You foresters know that. Now I hope you can see on here, which is bare earth with shading, the Gualala property, is all of the old skid trails are still visible. And the areas where those skid trails multiply cross draws is still visible. So I'm going to draw a line around those places and see how they're going. Just get my butt in there and see what's going on and see if it's an existing sediment transport corridor, if it's managed to fill itself, or if it's managed to calm down. So with that, this is the end. Reducing sediment production. Look at roads and landings and drainage sources that potentially delivering sediment, not necessarily delivering sediment, but all of them are an open threat, especially in unplanned ways. If a road was created a landslide over the last 30 years, it's going to be a sediment transport corridor. It's going to be pushing a great deal of sediment down. It wasn't supposed to collapse. If you have a stream hopping onto a road, we didn't plan that, but it's going to happen. And it happens to the best of us. And I have had my shares of screw-ups. Consider all sediment sources as sediment transport corridors by the question, do they reach the water course? And like William's property, I'm worried about your property because you're only 150 feet from the creek. Carry a shovel. I did an analysis for Collins Pine, and I was like, the real problem here is that nobody is stopping their truck when they see something wrong. They're always waiting for the bulldozer guy to get there. Well, the bulldozer guy's not going to get there for a while. Use your shovel, use your mattock, use your garden or weeding hoe. For those of us older in age, that weeding hoe is a really good way to create a little fingernail scrape across the road in order to deliver sediment, for now, into the right place, to get the water off your road. And if it doesn't hold, fine, you know where to put the bulldozer next year. But it's going to work in about half the instances. Well, that's about what I've got to say today, and I'd love to go into this further with you guys. And reducing sediment production is what Brock is going to talk about, and beavers too. I know.
Thanks, Brad.
No beavers.
No beavers.
No beavers.
Wait a
That's a
minute.
little whisper.
Okay, well, be quiet if you will. Anyway, thank you all for your attention, and glad to do it. Okay,
Thank you, Fred.
you may take over again.
Fred, I have a question.
Question.
So on our steep roads, on our slopes, and we're out there with our shovels and our little triangle.
In our bathrooms.
In any case all the time. But we are usually thinking of how do we protect the road? Honestly, we think, how do we protect the road before we think, how do we protect the creek? Although we'd like to do both. So when we're diverting it off the road, we're sending it down to the creek, just farther upstream from the actual Mark West.
Right.
But where else would we send it?
Well, sending it off the road is right. Divert, discharge, now dissipate. Putting just casual logs and stuff like that there will give it a lot more buffer.
So all the slow it, sink it, spread it.
Slow it, sink it, spread it is what it should be at the end of every water park. Great. Sure, my pleasure. Other questions from the room or from the ether? Okay, take it away, Mr. Brock.
Okie doke. All right. Well, thanks, Fred. Clearly you are a brother from another mother who also dislikes deranged hydrology from our road network. So I, for one, understand what you meant about what you said when you talked about sediment. I'm just saying. So let's see here. I'm going to share that slideshow. Oops. Yeah, you guys see that? Yeah, yeah. Anybody want to tell me you see that?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, good. All righty. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Brock Dolman, and I live and work out at the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. Been celebrating our 30th anniversary there, actually 31st year this year. And so thanks to Sonoma County Forest Conservation Working Group and for what you all have been doing for so many years. It's really wonderful, and I'm super happy to be here with you today. And really the thought or the topic I want to talk about, and I will say up front, because of the eager beaver believers in the room, yip whoop, go team go. And if you want to dive into that work, our Bring Back the Beaver campaign at Oxnard Ecology Center has kind of led the charge on that statewide, but that is a whole separate subject that I'm not even going to touch. And it's really the subject about the riverscapes and the beaverscapes. And what I want to talk to you all about is the uplandscapes. 80% of the surface area in any watershed functionally is uplands, and beaver habitat is 10% of a watershed, if you're lucky, 20%. So I love them both, and I want to integrate them, and everything we can do in the uplandscape for those beaver believers can support those, whether you got beavers or not, or fish, or just you actually need water in your life. So the topic I'm interested in engaging with you today is what we have just launched as of yesterday, formally as our campaign, is the Fuels to Flows, and thinking about this idea as a nature-based solution. And I'm going to get into this about our ideas around how do we have fewer trees and more forest with good fire, cleaner water, sequestered carbon, better biodiversity, and also some jobs with justice. So OAC, for folks who don't know, the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center is in the headwaters of the Dutchbill Creek watershed. And if you see the Dutchbill Creek watershed in the lower left, you folks would know that it's a tributary to the lower Russian River Basin. So originates in the area around Occidental through Camp Meeker, and its confluence with the Russian is down in Monte Rio. And OAC on the right-hand side, there's an 80-acre parcel. It's a wonderfully classic West County mixed mosaic of soils and vegetation communities and lots of biodiversity, and roughly about 60 acres of the 80 acres is forest, a Doug fir redwood, mixed hardwood evergreen type systems with we also have some beautiful grasslands and chaparral. And I did want to just lift up and give props to the folks at Regenerative Forest Solutions, Tamara Costa, Jeremy Fisher, and others, some others in the room, for their recent report that just came out about assessing the viability of wood recovery and utilization in Sonoma County. They got a bunch of wonderful key findings, but not that it will be a surprise to the many of you all, especially the founders of the Forest Working Group, but I just pulled out below the demographic data that I think is super fascinating, especially for all of us in Sonoma County. And just to key in on a couple pieces there, the reality that Sonoma County's private forest land owners hold 86% of the county's forested lands. And then if you look at that 93%, 13,670 of the 14,670 private ownerships are managing parcels of less than 100 acres. So we at Sowing Circle LLC, who owns the 80 acres in Oxnard Arts and Ecology Center, fit smack in the middle of this. We're on an 80-acre parcel in private ownership. And I think that's really important as we move forward in what we're talking about. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. The other piece I want to talk about is that the Arts and Ecology property, the 80 acres, and you can see on the left a LiDAR layer, like Fred just showed, what's got hill slope shading on it, is that we are an upland property. We don't have any perennial waterways. We have no fish-bearing waterways. You can see all the road networks, the haul networks from the legacy logging of the old growth days. And if I had time, I would love it because so much of what Fred spoke about with the nexus of the derangement of hydrology from concentrated flows by roads that results in exacerbating the volume and velocity of discharge of water on the landscape is often what is driving incision and gullies and the resultant sediment. And so often we see gullies as symptoms of a root cause, if you will, the source problem of road networks and other impervious surfaces. But we really focus a lot in the uplands. And just to say that when we purchased the property in 1994, even though these are some photos from early 2000s, about 50 acres of it looked like this. It was the classic Douglas fir encroaching, overstock, dog hair thicket. Much of that is the result of legacy repeat logging and subsequent resprouting and the suppression of fire. And we were significantly losing our prairies, our chaparral, our hardwoods because of this significant encroachment by, interestingly enough, a native tree, Douglas fir, which I totally love Douglas fir, and I don't have it out for Doug fir, but it's really a relationship about the quantity versus the quality and size and age class of trees. And so our mantra for the 30 years has really been this idea of fewer trees as nouns and more forest as verbs. And so we've been really actively managing our forests for multiple benefits for the last 30 years. And that often begins with what is currently considered vegetation management or fuel load mitigation. If it's adjacent to buildings, say within the 100-foot, referred to as defensible space type of work. And a lot of that work looks like we're disconnecting the ground fuel from the crown fuel, and we're doing limbing of trees and thinning of trees, and we may be lopping and scattering, or in our case, a lot of stuffing of gullies. We're also thinking a lot about the creation of habitats, cavity nesting for our woodpeckers and chickadees and swallows and things. And so while there are limits to growth, we can limit for growth. And I really want to engage that as regenerative disturbers, we step into the legacy of maybe the touch too much paradigm in the past, but that the pendulum swinging to a no touch at all, for us, neither of those work. They're both degenerative disturbances, and engaging with your land in a regenerative disturbance regime in the middle between the too much and the not enough is a dynamic process and ever evolving. And I invite you all to choose your own adventure on that. A bunch of places that we really focused early on as a biologist, as a wildlife biologist, I'm a conservation hydrologist, because no water, no life. All life as you know it, while it may be carbon-based, is by volume mostly water when it's actively alive. And so our initiation was with the vegetation management was to critically analyze our waterways and find those places in our upland waterways, of which we have 10 sub drainages that all discharge off our property to Dutchbill Creek, which is a critical coho and steelhead watershed in the Russian River. So we would limb and thin and then appropriately integrate that organic matter into our waterways to serve multiple functions. And this is a project that we started in the early 2000s. You look in that upper left, you can really get a sense of the magnitude and the thickness of the stem excluding, if you will, a dog hair thicket. And so all of that organic matter, we're rearranging that biomass and such. And then we came back to that same site 20 plus years later and did another entry and even ramped up our work with the fuels to flows there. We've been actively managing on behalf of creating conditions conducive for the endangered northern spotted owl, which for a dozen years we had a pair producing up 1 to 2 babies a year. And so we often do a lot of wildlife habitat piles and piles specifically to create habitat for the dusky-footed wood rat out in our wildland urban interface and our wildlands, because that's the primary prey base for the spotted owl. I will freely and sadly admit that the barred owl has showed up into our forests, and in the last 2 years, it may be that our spotters have been displaced, and it doesn't make me happy. So again, as active land managers, we've been participating and working on the property on behalf of multiple goals with CAL FIRE, as they were called in the day, and the NRCS. We did a wildland stewardship plan with Harold Appleton, and the forester, and Lindsay Daly, who worked for OAC at the time, who now is at the Tribal Eco Restoration Alliance. And that plan is online and you can find it, and it really lays out all of our various goals, our site observations, and then our action steps that we've been working on subsequent to the plan for the last 10 years plus. I wanted to start by saying we value fire and honor good fire, and also are humble and respectful on bad fire. And so we have been using good fire, prescribed burning, if you will, at OAC. We did our first burn back in '97. Some of these other photos are from the early 2000s. They were primarily in grasslands because from a safety perspective, that was the best for us to do that, because our forests weren't prepared yet to have fire put in them. We did we have been doing, and subsequently we actually did a burn plan with Fire Forward and the Good Fire Alliance, and in a 4-acre woodland forested setting, and did a controlled burn there back in January of 2022. So all I want to say there is I'm all in on fire. I fully get good fire, how it works. I've burned hundreds, if not thousands, of burn piles. And so everything I'm saying from here on out is not a diss of fire, but it is a both and with fire. Which is my sense that as we all collectively step in on behalf of vegetation management for fire resiliency, the big question is, what are you going to do with all that organic matter? And while combustion of that material and delivering it to the atmospheric pool is one way to do that, I'm a believer in the fact that the atmospheric pool currently is overstocked with CO2 to begin with. And to the degree that we can return some of that organic biomass to the soil sponge and our sequestered waterways in the uplands, I think we get multiple benefits there. So our mantra really is that before prescribed fire, slash ain't trash, it's a beneficial biomass. And I'm really look to composting before combustion, or composting in parallel operationally in a sequence of strategies with combustion. And these are different types of expressions of the ways in which we reutilize the material from our rearrangement of the fuel load architecture in the forest by either placing them parallel into gullies, into head cuts, into incised channels, and or often on the contour to break up the slope length and things. And so, in my opinion, it's time to take our fire fears and connect those with our water woes by turning them fuels into flows. And so I was interested in basically just a year ago or so, and Governor Gavin Newsom was talking about the state's climate commitment, their nature-based solutions targets to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. And interestingly, to look in the upper left, the recognition that California is 100 million acres as a state. And so 33.5 million acres of that state, a third of it, is at risk of wildfire. And 11.9 million acres of the state of that is at forest land. And so it's interesting to me that to get to those targets, when you look at that top line, the main strategy that's proposed to manage and reduce fire risk is mostly, in quotes, mostly through beneficial fire. And again, all in on the use of fire, but I guarantee you there's not a forest at this point in the state that has yet to have its fuels modified in prep to do a burn that anyone would feel safe about burning. So the question still remains, that's a lot of acres in need of vegetation management that literally is going to generate millions of tons of is it slash and trash or is it beneficial biomass? And so I'm interested at a bigger level, a question to we, the state of California, what's the plan to balance the beneficial biomass budget? Because this is a once in a generation organic. Is it a waste or a resource? And can we integrate the reutilization and reintegration of this organic matter as part of the prep for prescribed fire for fuel load resiliency to solve water, carbon, biodiversity issues simultaneously? I'll just note that we in 22 and 23 were limbing and thinning 40 acres at OAC, and we roughly estimate that about 10 acres of that in 4 different waterways, we took 100% of the organic matter that we limbed and thinned for that forest health project, and we integrated it into the waterways. And that turned out to be 151,000 pounds of organic matter over nearly 1,000 linear feet or 1,800 feet of waterway, which nets out 75 tons of carbon that's been sequestered. Interestingly enough, 75 tons is equal to the amount that Jeff Bezos used for his 11-minute space flight. 75 tons is also the amount of carbon that is the annual lifetime carbon budget for 1 billion people on the planet. So that's 10 acres. And the governor just said we have 33 million acres that's at risk. And even of the nearly 12 million acres in California, how many pounds, how many tons, how many million tons of organic matter can we think about repurposing? Another fun part is, as a biologist, I'm interested simultaneously in fire resiliency, but also biodiversity. And I really loved this article a few years ago, or these are images of our upland salamanders, our plethodontid salamanders, if you will, the lungless salamanders. And so we create these perpendicular plethodontid palaces that are on the landscape to slow the flow, slow it, spread it, sink it, store it, share it for salamanders, and retain the water and create microhabitats. Because, as was found in 2013 in a study up in Humboldt County, these authors found that woodland salamanders, the ones you're seeing now and others, could, because of their presence by eating the cruncher munchers in the soil food web, who would liberate more GHGs through CO2 emissions from the decomposition too quickly of the organic matter, that the presence of the salamander, or the trophic cascade of this carnivore, could result in a process that increased the retention up to 179 pounds of carbon per acre in the forest because of the salamanders. So it's this kind of holistic integrated thinking that super inspires me. So a lot of times we're working in our uplands, and you can see here's a thinned forest, a limbed forest. We've been stuffing gullies up above. We've got some perpendicular structures, and then we did a head cut treatment that's center in the photo. In this case, you'll see the pool in the front. I don't stuff everything all the time because I know, as a land manager of this property for 30 years, that we have rough-skinned newts that breed in this pool because it's a bedrock controlled pool that retains flow late into the spring. So we're always modifying the tactical approach to optimize the benefits of the system and meet multiple benefits. All of that ends up adding up to what we've been calling our beneficial biomass portfolio. And it's really asking the question to any and all of us who are engaging in vegetation management for ostensibly upfront fire resiliency. Have you considered a broader suite of practices that can achieve other goals in addition to your fire goals, such as your water quality goals for those TMDLs we heard about earlier, the carbon sequestration goals, the biodiversity goals, the access goals, the aesthetics goals, those things. And so there's a whole list, and this is a partial list of different ways to really honor this beneficial biomass as a resource instead of as trash. And so we obviously have been doing different expressions of that. In this instance, in Fred's, the sediment transport corridors, below our pond, we have an area where the slope is lower and there's a legacy historic flood terrace. And so we move to these longer linear perpendicular structures, much like a beaver dam, what's often called a beaver dam analog, a BDA, in a sequence of these structures across these areas with the organic matter that we limbed and thinned, because we want to support these upland process-based fuels to flow so we can slow it, spread it, sink it, store it, and share it in these structures so that they can help it leak later longer, so it is clear, cold, and copious for coho downstream in the creek, right? So here's just a quick little video that I want to share with you of that area that was after it was stuck. Roll it. Atmospheric River 2022. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Happy New Year's, people. This is a Happy New Year. Look at all this water we're holding here. All of our fire fuel load, we put it perpendicular. We're holding the flow. We're ponding it up. One dam all the way. Oh, look at that. Another dam. Channel spanner, reconnecting floodplain parapet. Another one. Plugged up the gully here, spread the channel, split the flow. Now we've got two flows. We've got a little island. There used to just be an eroding channel delivering sediment to fill Coho. It's going to bank to bank, all the way across the whole channel, slow and spreading, sinking storage, share it, baby. This is what's up. All the way across. And belly stuffing with the head cut. This used to be a deeply eroding and sized channel delivering sediment to kill coho. Now we're slowing the flow. We've got our nice slash from the fuel load, and we've got the slash Euphrat. It benefits the biomass on site, stacking functions, water quality, water quantity, carbon, salmon habitat, fire resilient landscapes. Ring it. All righty. Well, all that enthusiasm is wonderful. And guess what? You do need permits to fill these waters on the state. So we at OAC did secure both the 401 fill permit from the regional board and a 1600 lake bed stream alteration agreement from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to legally do these projects. And we have continued to work with those agencies on refining their sense of these projects, especially in these first order class 3 streams, these ephemeral upland waterways, towards what is often referred to as cutting the green tape and helping to reduce the regulatory nexus here in a way to increase the pace and scale of this work, especially for those of us private property owners at small scales who aren't commercially doing this work and necessarily don't have the money to implement this stuff. And then we did receive some cost share funding to do a bunch of these projects. And I just want to lift up and thank the Goldridge RCD folks after the fire for the North Bay Forest Improvement Program funding and also the NRCS EQIP funding that we received. And at some point it takes people to do it. And so here's some of our agents of regenerative disturbance regimes. We're tooled up and we're going to get out there. This is actually a group of folks who are students at Sonoma State. And so we often, OAC is an educational training center. And so we're often working with folks to do and teach and demonstrate and train. And one of the organizations that we've spent the most time training, and we collaboratively kind of co-conceived of this whole idea a number of years ago, has been the North Bay Jobs with Justice and the folks at Resilience Works who work with immigrant farm workers and labor organizers. And we've been doing a whole process over a couple of years now of training these folks and honoring, in many cases, their own traditional indigenous knowledge from the countries that they come from, Mexico and Central America. And so the sense that if we're going to build a resilient future, we can't do it without worker justice as well. So there's the ecosystem restoration and there's the ecosystem restoration that has to happen simultaneously. And so in cases like this, which is not at OAC, it was somewhere else in West County, I'll remain unnamed. Wonderful project to limb and thin. And those 4x4 burn piles are really well made, and I get it. But when they're that directly adjacency to a gully that's literally got a shotgun culvert that's draining a road, as Fred told us about, and is literally driving sediment directly to the receiving creek where coho and steelhead spawn, the time it takes to build those 4x4 piles as neatly as they can be, and then to come back with a separate crew in the winter when there's a spare the air day and it's a burn window, to then burn them versus having just stuff the gully at the same time, takes less energy, less cost, and less labor in the moment to result in cleaner water. So as you get further away and either the gully isn't available to take the slash or it's just inefficient to get there, then sure, burn up on the slope. But piles directly adjacent to this just make my heart not so happy. And so I'm really into the idea of spare the air and stuff the gully to save the salmon and the salamanders. And so this is an opportunity for collaboration and cooperation. We have just launched this campaign. I'll give you a web link at the end, and we have these 2 videos. There's an 18-minute DIY how to stuff a gully and a 3+ minute animation that I would love for you all to watch and share with your friends and family. We work with lots of folks in this work, and so here's a 2-pager that the Community Alliance with Family Farmers put together for their communities. And it's great that Eric's on the call here with Sonoma Ecology Center. We worked with them in Pepperwood to put together this amazing website of Tending the Land for Fire Resiliency in Sonoma County. So I'd reference that to everybody to check out. Also to Fred's points, and I always have this slide in my shows anyway, as our dear friend Danny Hagens with Pacific Watershed Associates says, nothing in nature mimics a road. And I am 100% with Fred that the majority of gullies I'm dealing with at some point, if I walk upstream, are being driven and deranged by the concentration of flow that is most often related to road networks. And so we have to do these in parallel. And I'm happy to say we at OEC did a fish-friendly road project funded by CDFW 15+ years ago, outslope, rolling dips, culvert replacements, and we have barely had to touch those roads with a shovel or a pick or since we did that work. So it's saving time and money while also producing clean water. And then I just wanted to showcase a whole bunch of partnerships in this Fuels to Flows work, and the gully stuffing is but one of the tactics here. So Kate Lundquist and I, my co-director at the Water Institute, recently, just actually a few weeks ago, worked with Golden Gate National Recreation Area staff and interns down in the Tennessee Valley area in Marin County, and took on this very large head cut. I just got sent a video of this after the atmospheric river a few weeks ago, and we've got totally clean water running out of the bottom of this where it was looked like chocolate milk prior to that. And this is actually using eucalyptus, which is upstream of this, which they're in the process of beginning to remove all that eucalyptus, and they didn't know what to do with it. And yet they have massively incised gullies. We can put all of the euc into the gullies that they have there and do it in a good way. I've had the pleasure for the last 3+ years now of also working with folks at Trout Unlimited and the Mendocino RCD, the Conservation Corps out of Ukiah, up on a project that Mendocino Redwood Company owns in the Navarro River watershed, adjacent to a creek called Flynn Creek. And so we've been doing a roadside fuels project and then having those fuels for fish flows, and been super fun and training and getting folks in there to do the forest health, limbing, thinning, fire, fuel load work while simultaneously reutilizing on site 100% of that organic matter. There is no material left over for a burn pile. In fact, the gullies still could use twice as much as we could put in them. And then in some cases, here we have this amazing spot where we come out of the transport corridor into a depositional area. It's an alluvial fan, a depositional zone that had been dewatered on its historic flood terrace because of an incision of a channel on one side. And so we turn on what's called the switch, where we plug up the switch at the top of the fan, and then we begin to divert to slow and spread so we can sink and share and store the water and get it out onto these legacy terraces, and then put different bioberms and things in that area to retain it. And so thankfully the folks at TU, Trout Unlimited, Mia Van Docto, had a parallel watershed, a paired watershed study happening up there that they've had instrumented for a number of years now. We're at 2025, so 5 years now. And they shared some data with me, Mia did. And this in the red box there is the amount of water below the ground, and actually the amount of water that's above ground post-project, which is really reflecting the images you see below. So you can see that we slowed and spread and sank. And the big question is after we store it, are we going to share it as it leaks later longer into Flynn Creek for the Coho flows or not? And then here's just another one looking at another groundwater well. So there's just clearly the water quantity benefits and the water quality benefits through sediment reduction and on-site retention are benefited. Thankfully, here in Sonoma County, we have our regional parks are amazing and love them all. And in the lower right is Monona Heveland, sorry. And she, with Brooke Edwards, have been we've been engaging with them in a number of Sonoma County regional parks. So the last couple of years, we've been working in Monte Rio Redwoods Park. lots of legacy logging, road-related, huge culvert incisions. And so been doing staff training for both regional parks in these upland fuels to flows, gully stuffing projects. They've subcontracted resilience works and Northway Jobs with Justice, and we've been doing a whole bunch of big projects with them as well. And here's an interesting one. We had stuffed this little bit of gully. It was a small gully and had a little bit of flow in it. And then last year, CAL FIRE with the parks did a 30-acre burn, and they weren't tracking that this little gully was stuffed here at all. But after the fire, we were poking around to see what happened with the burn. And I just love this, that in the gully where we stuffed it, where it had brought up the emergent flow up to the surface and wetted all of that organic matter, because we're putting organic matter in the wetted corridor so it reduces its flammability, which is better for composting. Check it out. It didn't burn. It didn't burn. Look at the white ash everywhere else. Clearly that fire was hot enough to burn everything else. But the little wetted corridor of the stuffed gully that wasn't in size, that didn't act like a fire funnel because it was too wet, pushed the fire out and created a little mini fire break in that section. And now we're prepared for the first rains to have that carbon catcher's mitt intercept all the runoff, that initial ash flow, and hold it in place and actually increase composting and improve water quality. So the opportunity here is to stuff the incisions before the ignitions. And that's the fun part about the operationalizing these processes as part of both having a burn boss, but also having a biomass boss work together on burn plan development and implementation. At Stillwater Cove up on the north coast there with regional parks, with Swiftwater Design, Kevin standing below the bridge that we removed, and look at how tall that gully is. The lower right is the bridge removed and the gully stuffed. That's 6 foot plus of stuffing there in a really large system that we were plugging water into. And then downstream below that, we did a postless BDA. So you cut off the head of the gully with the project at the top, and then we build a big postless BDA at the bottom, and that basically backwaters and drowns the toe of the gully. So it's a tag team effort in these systems. And that's a massive amount of fuel load, but that gully, that's a 5% of the amount of material that gully could take in. It's ginormous. And then most excitedly for me right now is that we've been collaborating with, again, regional parks, Sonoma RCD, funded by Wildlife Conservation Board, to do a significant upland process-based restoration planning project for the upcoming Mark West Regional Park. And part of this that the agencies and the regulators have been asking for is can we standardize a series of best management practices with the design specification specs and drawings? And so on the left is a list of different upland PBR fuels to flows, BMPs, that we've developed as part of this project. And that map on the right is sort of a conceptual idea about where different types of tactics of where brush packing is best, or a culvert outfall is best, or brush check dams, or where there's switches to be turned on to connect flood terraces and one log dams and wattles and fascines and planting and all that kind of stuff. And so Marianne King, who used to be with Trout Unlimited, is an amazing artist. And so here's just a sampling of some of the types of BMP drawings that have a language, component that goes with them, so that we can then begin to permit these structures, and that the regulators really have a sense of spec on what is being built, and then the people bidding the project or doing the project have a guidance document on that. So here's a few of them, just a sampling of the drawings there. The culvert outfall brush packing one to the roads conversation is one that I love doing. And that really then lands in this rigorous process that Sonoma RCD really took the lead on of using remote sensing and LiDAR layers and things to come up with all of the channels in green and yellow are high priority for this upland PBR work. Orange and red can still work, but they're a little bit steeper. They might need more attention to certain details. So that's super exciting as we begin to scale this and legitimize it and work with in the regulatory community. And I would just say that, we're doing this all over the state. People are having fun doing this. I would support you in checking out the California Process-Based Restoration Network, Cal PBR Network. We have a website. This is an entity that OAC Water Institute co-founded with a whole bunch of other amazing organizations. We do these trainings every year called Build Like a Beaver. This one was up in the North Fork Feather River system here a couple years ago. We'll have 70, 80 people out for a week building structures. And it all is related to this bigger idea of, again, of our Fuels to Flows campaign. So how do we take the nexus of fire, earth, life, water, and air, and what is the regulatory and funding agency system? What are their mandates, and how can we have an intersectional nexus where we can help CAL FIRE meet its fire goals while the Water Board meets or NRCS meets Healthy Soils goals, and we've got CDFW restoring listed species, and Water Board again improving water quality, and the California Air Resources Board reducing emissions towards their emissions reductions goals by helping to integrate the millions of tons of organic matter that currently is the only idea, as far as I can tell, at the top level, is to send it to the atmosphere. And so I'll leave you with this one that we just literally launched this campaign yesterday, our Fuels to Flows campaign. There's a web link there, but if you just plug that word in, go to the Oxnard Arts and Ecology Center website, check it out, links for the videos, links for these other graphics I've showed you, and other information and resources is all there. And with that, I thank you for your time and look forward to answering questions.
Presentation. Like there's a lot that I'm gonna go back and explore those links, watch some of the videos. We have plenty of time for discussion, so on Zoom, if folks wanna just unmute and ask your question, you can start talking.
Yeah, hi. I'm Kusama, and that presentation was so fantastic and really poignant for the problem that we're experiencing on our property. And I definitely want to follow you more and learn more about it and approach it. But you know, as a citizen, how easy is it to get one of these permits to go through that process?
So great question, and thanks for even being here and being concerned and wanting to try to engage with your property in an active way to restore issues, especially legacy issues that you likely inherited and maybe weren't the cause of, which is many of our issue. So the answer to all of these questions is, I'll lead with the "it depends" answer, right? And then the question, really, then, to not be punny about it, is upon what does it depend? And so, like I was mentioning, in these upland systems, what are known as first order, the ephemeral seasonal drainages, the non-fish bearing waterways, they don't even support aquatic wildlife, for instance, right?
Yeah.
That area is the most active opportunity to engage with some of these agencies, because the risk-reward ratio of doing this good work to benefit the resources that California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Regional Water Board care about, they're recognizing that, again, with some standardized practices, which is why I'm excited about the work we've been doing with the regional parks and Sonoma RCD and Marianne King's drawings, is I think their comfort level in working with landowners or consultants and installers with this portfolio of practices, the permitting is going to keep getting easier and easier towards maybe not a no permit needed scenario, but a really simple process. So I would just say, talk to your, you just got to talk to the local regional board and fish and wildlife person and have them come out and have a look at it. And the RCDs, we in Sonoma County, between Goldridge RCD and Sonoma RCD, have, their staff are wonderful and can really, I think, help guide those conversations. And they have direct relationships with those agencies. They may, in some cases, have funding to support that, the NRCS folks. So, and I think there's other nonprofits in the county that are also doing that. So there's a lot of resource and opportunity. Watch the videos, watch that 18-minute video. I think you'll see that it's like anything, it's not that hard to do, but there are some specific aspects of it that you just got to get right. It needs a good foundation, it needs a good hatch. It's like a building, and how you build the wall in between and the organic matter and is the thing. So it's too daunted, but there's a way to do it right.
We have like 40-foot walls on our gully. They're really, really steep. And it's only like a 2-foot wide, little creek. It's not very wide. And there are no fish or habitat. It's a very low flowing, kind of, I think, ephemeral thing. There's no blue line on the map or anything, but it's been neglected for, over 40 years. And there's just a blackberry tunnel that we have been carving away at to even access the stream. And so one of my questions is, because it's the bed and everything is very overgrown with blackberry, is that an appropriate material to use in carbon sinking versus burning in this way?
Yeah, so the Himalayan blackberry, is its own special species, and I wouldn't when you clear that out, I wouldn't stuff that channel with blackberry, because blackberry, as many of us know, has the capacity to put out adventitious roots on a little stem if it's got water on it. And so if you stuffed it with blackberry, it would just resprout in this intense tunnel. So it may be that you're going to want to clear the blackberry, pull those blackberry piles aside, stack them up. You could sun dry them for a couple years and kill it off, and then maybe be able to reintegrate it or utilize it later. But then I think we got to look at what do you got, and if there's other resources. I heard somebody's pulling broom, and what's cool about broom is broom won't resprout. And so I love stuffing gullies with broom when it doesn't have seed on it, per se, because it doesn't resprout. Although it's highly nitrogen rich and that carbon. And so you really need to pair up any of these with larger, more carbonaceous trunks and limbs when you build that compost pile, because that's what we're doing with the green gauze and the layering, is building a compost pile that then water delivers to it. And so, as people who built compost pile know, they tend to settle because they're breaking down. And what's great when they break down is if you have adjacent vegetation, especially trees or other things, they grow into this now saturated carbon-rich compost piles or root bed, and their health is even better. But you may need to supplement or add layers on top, depending on your organic matter. So for you, I think specifically, because it's kind of like you looking at your whole site and tracking. You're focused on the gully, and that's great. In thinking about your fire fuel load, and if you have vegetation management to do, and you would be removing organic matter somewhere else on the property for those goals, can we pair them up and have a matchmaking opportunity here? It's like tinder, literally there's tinder here that we just want to transfer from the forest to the gully. And every site has its own unique portfolio, if you will, of appropriate materials to utilize and ways to integrate them on the site. So I'm not trying to punt, but it depends.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm curious to know, if you have gullies on steeper inclines, are you still laying slash and the logs parallel to the sides of the gully? Are there ever situations in which you would go perpendicular to them to slow water if there's like more velocity coming?
Yeah, great question. So that's the fun stuff. To parallel or to perpendicular, that is, and it's a both and I'll say again, it depends. If you have a very incised, if a vertically incised system, and it's a transport section, like what Fred was talking about, it's a conveyance, then you have two choices. If you have enough material to substantially parallel pack it for a significant amount of its length, or the whole thing, you can then do that. And again, the video really talks about how to do that, and parallel pack the whole length of it. If you're sitting on the problem of too much organic matter for fire and fuel load, and if it's really steep and you're concerned about that parallel pack mobilizing, then you would stake it in place and pin it in place. If you don't have enough material, but you still want to have some benefit and you're in that transport reach, you could do smaller down in the bed of the channel, perpendicular, kind of like check dams. We call them brush check dams, postless beaver dam analogs. And again, there's a spec for that we developed in the Mark West work. And now what you're going to do is you're going to add some steps in this transport reach, but still inset into your incised system. And you'll have small iterative depositional areas that will slow the flow, and you'll begin to upgrade small amounts of organic matter or sediment, depending on if you've got dirty sediment coming in from above, but you're not filling the channel. In areas where that incised gully, then the slope reduces and flattens a bit, and maybe you get some width, and it moves from erosional to depositional, and you can connect. That's where, like the video I just showed you, you can really ramp up the perpendicular stuff and spread out the process space to maybe the historic flood terrace. So all of it is super topographically specific about incision, deposition, terrace or not, transport or not. And it may sound complicated, and maybe it is a little bit, but it's not. The goal success looks like what you don't want to do is overpack an incised gully such that you kick the flow out of the gully and out onto a side slope, and you end cut around one of the sides, or you drive erosion somewhere else. So that's where I'm saying there are some precautionary things about the answer to your question that you have to make a decision about parallel and perpendicular. I don't know if that helps.
Great, thank you so much. That's helpful.
Second question?
Yeah, fabulous presentation, Brian. You're working in swales and you're working in gullies, but you have a permit. Are you also working in class 1s and class 2s? And have you gotten any heartburn from CAL FIRE or funding agencies about whacking trees that are alive near class 1s and class 2s?
So we OAC have collaborated with lots of other organizations like the RCDs, like Trout Unlimited, like CDFW, like Dragonfly Restoration and Doug Gore, and many others who are doing class 1 and class 2 in-stream habitat structures, large woody debris, wood jams, lots of those kinds of projects. And those, as you say, absolutely have a different level of need for permitting. Army Corps of Engineers likely is in there because those are still waters of the US, whereas these uplands are not. The fish passage questions, all of those issues are much bigger deal. The flow volumes, the intensity, the need for, it's not maybe so much low-tech process-based restoration. There might be some big yellow toys in the mix. There may be some cables and epoxy and boulders. So we, and me personally, have been engaged in those kinds of practices. But I think what I'm promoting today, and specifically, is not so much in the riverscape per se. And I think because those worlds are so well articulated, and I know you've been involved in them as well, Fred. And there's CWW's got bulletins and salmon stream habitat restoration guidance documents and all that kind of stuff. And throughout Sonoma County, there's just hundreds and hundreds of those projects, and large woody debris projects, and in-stream structures, and digger logs, and vortex weirs, and all that fun stuff. But what I'm, in addition to that, and that's where beaver action can be fun too, yay. But I feel like the neglected zone, which I'm trying to shine light on, has been up in the uplands in these class 3s and these non-fish bearing waterways. So this show is really focused in that part of the drainage network.
Good. And remember, there's like 7 times more of those than class 1s.
Thank you for which I tried to say, but again, 80% of the surface area of every watershed you know of is uplands, and yes, Fred said 7 times the total length and distance and volume are uplands in class 3s versus class 1. So it's not that either or one is any better, but if your sole focus is bring back the coho and I'm got my head down in the creek in the class 1, I can guarantee you ain't going to get there for your long run goal of a sustainable spawning regime for coho unless you address the other 80% of the system and its current function for water quantity and quality and sediment runoff, peak amplification of that delivery in the 7 times more drainage network that delivers all of that stuff to the creek where the coho are. So we got to work from ridge to all the way down to river, and heretofore it just feels like the uplands folks have been neglected.
So that's what we are, and we are upstream on Northwest Creek. And they're one of our ravines that there's several of them that have been historical and pretty well stable over the years on this property. But after the Tubbs fire, a lot of the firs and burned in the ravines, deep in the ravines. And as those trees are dying now, they're falling over. And they've created we've had two pretty serious mudslides up pretty high, a half a mile up the ridge. And those mudslides have brought down, I don't know how much, but a ton of sediment. And we have a lot of clay. We have clay and that red stuff. And we have rocks. Boy, do we have rocks. But my question though then is, as this sediment has come down, it has changed these historical ravine where water runs 8 to 9 months out of the year, because there's springs up there, historical springs, old homesteads that have been stable. And it feels like, especially with the two mudslides that have happened since that huge downpour in 2023, where it dumped 12 inches on us in a 24-hour period, that these mudslides are gonna get worse as the roots die, So, down below, above Marquest Creek, which is your number, where you need permits and everything, and we have a 200-foot setback, you can't touch anything without permits from everybody. Let's say we have enough flat or stable land that's 500 feet above Marquest Creek. Do we need permits, and will the gully stuffing that we have of 8,647,000,000 bay trees work? Baby bay tree bushes on steroids. What about that?
So I'm just a lowly biologist who works for a nonprofit, and so on the permit question, it's above my pay grade, and I will then say you need to talk to those regulators to verify that, and you have to bring them out in the field and show them the specific sites you want to work in, and get their okay with it to the degree that you wish to stay above board on that. So I'll leave that there. To the fact that they're spring fed and sounds like you're saying retaining water for many months longer into the dry season, that may complicate the class 2 to class 3 definition a little bit, depending. So that's another added factor. And I'm sorry, I feel you on the post-fire legacy, loss of veg, consequence, landslide, amplified sediment delivery to waterways. As we know, everywhere we're having these catastrophic burns, that's the resultant what we're witnessing. And especially with what we're increasingly witnessing is not long after catastrophic fire, we tend to have, in many cases, the rainfall regimes. We've got these extreme rain events. So I will say that all of us in the process-based restoration network, especially working around burn scars and things, everybody, and especially a bunch of the regulators, have gotten clear that as soon as that fire is done burning and it's safe to get in there before the first rain event, that's your 98% of your opportunity to do anything to stabilize that channel and intercept the ensuing amount of sediment and ash that's coming at you, independent of if there's a landslide or not. You got to get in there that first year before the first rains. And that means you don't have green gauze, the black stuff that's all you got. So you're going to get in there and you're going to modify those trunks, and you're going to start getting creative on building these structures in the channel. A lot of that work that friends we work with have been doing that up in the Sierra Nevada, have had incredible results and massive amounts of sediment retention within the first rain event. And in fact, an RCD up by Chico, I think Butte RCD, they expedited a permit through the governor's office of research and planning to be able to get in as soon as not the Paradise Campfire. What was the big one up there anyway, one of the big ones that just happened last year. And they got in there and before the first year and got the funding to do that, and everybody showed up, and their projects, I've talked to them since it's rained, they're working great. So all to say that, yeah, everything I showed you in my slideshow is all pre-burn. It's all trying to prep it for when fire comes, whether it's good fire or unintended bad fire. Can we pre-do that in a green forest scenario? It's a whole separate slideshow that has a lot of these components to do, which is the post-burn reclamation and stabilization question. But I will just say, now that you guys are many years out on that, it doesn't mean you still can't get in there, especially with the landslides, and think about what it's going to take to take some of those trees that have fallen down, and with the chainsaws and some folks who can move them, rearrange them intentionally and structurally into that system to achieve some of the goals that you may have, which is reducing sediment delivery, increasing retention, flattening slopes, creating spaces for that material to be held and safely. And so there's work to be done there as well. It's more complicated and it's harder, I freely admit.
Anyone else on Zoom have any questions that you want to unmute and ask Brock?
I want one that Fred asked a good ringer question as well earlier about CAL FIRE and their opinion on this stuff. And I have not had a direct conversation with CAL FIRE per se on this stuff, but I have with a number of foresters and others and folks in the Good Fire Alliance. And they're definitely, it comes up frequently, and I hear somewhat frequently that, oh, if you're just stuffing gullies, you're basically making burn piles in the gully that are going to ignite and jackpot and create a fire funnel that's going to rip up the draw when that fire comes. And I have several observations, and that's why I showed you the picture of the one stuffed gully that got burned over in the controlled burn, and in fact, how the stuffed gully brought the water up to the surface. And the deal is we're working in the wetted space. So the most risky place and the most risky time is the moment between the limbing and thinning and the stuffing before rain. Let's say we're doing it in the fall where that material's been packed and a fire was to show up then. That's risky. But so is that risk for every other burn pile sitting on the hill slope that isn't being burned until it's burn season, which is later. So everybody's sitting with that risk. I will say that the degree to which we have intentionally limbed and thinned the funnel of the corridor and rearranged that fuel load from its vertical connected ground to crown state into this densely compacted state of green and brown in the gully that's really well compacted, and you jump on it. It's flammability, the fuel hours, if you will. It's not a 10-minute fuel or a 20-minute fuel, and we're putting bigger logs on top of that thing. So it's going to take some chutzpah to get it going, and it's going to smolder, I bet. I don't think it's throwing big flame lengths. Could it? Up for grabs. Doing nothing and leaving the gully incised, I guarantee you exacerbates the fire funnel, because now you've really got an open earthen channel that will ramp up that effect. And then after we get the first rain year, the second rain year, we're composting, that material's becoming organic, it's being wetted, it's being penetrated with roots and things. And so my take is in the risk-reward relationship here of being both fire conscious, but also recognizing we've got TMDLs, we've got salmonids, we've got upland hill slope hydrology, we've got carbon sequestration needs, that we need to find a way to solve all of those simultaneously. And I think my observation and experience, 35 years of doing this, is that we can do it, and we are doing it. And so I'm totally up and have been reaching out to many folks in the fire community to leverage this nexus between having biomass bosses and burn bosses work together.
Any questions in the room? There.
Yeah, I've got a question here on Zoom. Great presentation, Brock. That was very inspiring. Here in the Jenner Headlands, we've got a deeply incised gully in our coastal prairie. And we did a whole bunch of fuel load thinnings. We got a bunch of slash, but it's about a half mile away. So we're having a discussion right now. Is it worth it to transport that slash a half mile with a truck and a trailer over to the coastal prairie incised gully? So I'm just wondering, in your experience, what would you consider just not worth it as far as how far you'd want to transport that material It's pretty deep. It's about 10-foot gully. It's going to eat a lot of material. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. I'm wondering what you think.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yeah. The prairie gullies, the grassland gullies are exceptionally hard in this realm because, like you said, we're often limited in the structural materials, the organic material, especially the woodier stuff. I have stuffed a bunch of head cuts with coyote brush or broom, if that's part of the prairie restoration plan, is to mitigate some of the woody shrubs and coming in. I think it's to each their own in doing your return on investment analysis about if you've got that woody material far enough away, maybe a one-time stabilization at the nick point of the head cut alone. If that's all you can really do is mitigate the nick point of the head cut with one strategic brush packing there, and then maybe down below in the deep gully, there's a series of perpendicular small channel spanning type, cross dams, BDAs, just to get some aggradation in the bed of that gully so that it quits deepening, because the deeper the gully goes, the more oversteepened the sides go, which is what drives the lateral slumping. So gullies, erosion moves uphill, and the deeper it gets, it moves laterally, and it moves uphill. It gets wider, deeper, wider, deeper, wider, deeper. As long as the head cut is eroding and or the toe of the gully is being taken away because it's oversteepened somewhere down at the bottom, and it's driving a head cut up that system. So stabilizing the bed of the gully with that, whatever you got. If you got rock, a lot of folks maybe end up having rock in that situation. Oh boy, the folks in the Southwest desert country have done miraculous things and with nothing but rock, and rock doesn't burn. I love rock. We just don't have it as available. So you get to be creative and come up with your own recipe to meet the goals of what you have there. But I feel your pain that grassland gullies are really hard, and I will say grassland soils are often highly erodible and are vulnerable to erosion, especially if it's got a dang culvert discharging flow that's running through that meadow system, which is, I'll bet, I mean, you've got some of those. In fact, I know for a fact because I've spent a bunch of time up the headlands. And so then it begs the question of, let's put a gauze bandage on the nick point where the bleeding wound is of the head cut. But at some point, to support Fred's initial talk, we got to go make a fish-friendly road and increase the discharge dissipation and decentralization through outsloping and increasing rolling dips or more ditch relief culverts or whatever we can do to reroute the road and the flows to stop the hydraulic mining of those culverts, which is what they're doing as a long-term fix.
Yep. Road is the culprit on this one. Thanks, Brock.
Yeah. Culverts, they share 4 letters with the word pervert, and culverts pervert the landscape. And we've got to, they're just enemy number 1.
Do you have any more exciting questions? Okay. What about anyone else on Zoom? Anything you're curious about?
Brock wants to go.
No, I just saw myself on your big screen. I'm like, whoa, that's cool.
Picking you up. Okay, great. Well, yeah, amazing presentation, and thanks for so many folks for joining us for it as well. And I know, Brock, you said that there are resources online where people can learn more, watch that video, visit the website, and then we'll have the recording of this presentation available on sonomaforest.org probably next week, so you can revisit it if you missed anything or want to go back and view it again. Yeah, thanks so much. And yeah, our meeting's just about to wrap up, and before we finish, we'll just talk about any upcoming events. I think that we had a ton going on this winter, and it's kind of starting to come to a close. I think the last Learn and Burn Day at Pepperwood was happening today during this meeting, so I hope that went well for them. And then the one other one that I can think of is there's going to be an in-person workshop at Laguna Foundation on March 29th. And there we're talking about using grazing as a tool for some vegetation reduction, wildfire resilience, and reduction of invasive plants. And then Lynn, do you have another one?
We have one more burn pile workshop taking place in the Upper Marquest Watershed on Sunday, May 23rd. Dolman from Pepperwood will be leading it, and we have some spaces up there doing that. So if we can put maybe my email on the chat, people can write to me if they want to sign up for that.
Okay, great. So email Lynn. Your email's kind of, it's not just your name. Okay, I'll type it in the chat here, and then anyone who's interested in that burn pile workshop can email Lynn about it.
And just to thank everybody who's participating in this, we're picking up more people and we're getting a fabulous website. And if you didn't see the presentation from the previous meeting, you're missing a good thing. So, and that was about the fire safe areas for Marin, Sonoma, and Napa. It was really, really great. So I thank everybody. It's great.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you, Brock and Fred. And yeah, anything you want to revisit from the past, you can find on sonomaforest.org. And you can also sign up for our listserv there if you want to come to our future meetings and be on the email list.